Hello, welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and this channel is where I share with you my works in progress, finished projects, things I'm cooking up, books I'm reading, funny things my kids may say. My hope is that as you watch this episode and the previous episodes that you find some inspiration along the way. This is episode 87, and we are in the very beginning of June year 2022. It is a beautiful day here. This morning around sunrise, it was still maybe the mid 40s, but we're supposed to warm up to 70 degrees by this afternoon, which is perfect temperature for me. I love that range between like 50s to 70s. I feel like once you get into the upper 70s, it's hot, but that's like beach weather, right? But yeah, we've been having beautiful weather. We had some storms. Thankfully in our area, none of our big trees fell. We didn't really have any damage. there was just some strong winds and heavy rains, but the grass and the plants are all soaking up the water. Last summer we had a drought and there was hardly any rain. I feel like we've had more rain just in this spring than we had all last summer last year, but I don't know the specifics. If you are new here, a very warm welcome, and if you are a returning viewer, a warm welcome back. So just so that everybody is kind of on the same page here, usually I have a vlog in the beginning of my episodes that highlights some of the things that have happened since the previous episode, and then we kind of chit-chat for a little bit, and then I go into finished projects, works in progress, and then an eats and reads section where I talk about maybe things I've cooked lately or read lately, and I definitely have books that I want to talk about today. I have read 2 books, and then I'm like 2/3 maybe of the way through this third one, and I love them so much. And it is a new to me author, and I'm just really excited to share that with you. So today, let's see here. I do have 2 finished projects, 3 works in progress to talk about, and then the 3 books. And then links to things that I talk about will all be in the description box below this video. Sometimes you have to click on like a little show more arrow or something like that. And I try to link to websites like designers' websites or things like that, and then usually they have all their social media or whatever ways that you can find them on their website. And then I do use Ravelry, so I have a separate section below for my Ravelry project pages should you want to look for information there. I do try to share as much or more information as I have on my Ravelry project pages here on YouTube, because Ravelry isn't an accessible site to everybody, but also there's just more I can say and show via this format, this kind of dialogue, than I can usually in a text box. So I think that is it for that. And then all my videos include closed captioning, so you can click CC on the, I think it's like lower right of the screen, if you would like captions. And then I always forget to mention this part, and if you watch YouTube a lot, you probably know already, but you can also adjust the speed of the videos. Sometimes, almost all the time, I talk pretty quickly. When I get excited about things, I tend to talk faster, and I use my hands a lot and move things around, but you can always speed up or slow down the videos as it works for you. I do try to slow down a little bit. I feel like in the past, when I've ever had, the need to do public speaking or presentations or things like that, my biggest issue was always talking too fast. So I would do my best to take a breather here and there and slow it down. But yeah, I think that is it. I wanted to share with you my bouquet here. I think this is our second bouquet of the season. The first one were some hyacinths, and those are long gone. Our tulips are done. But these are all from our garden. These are some, I think they're called crystal blue spires, maybe. I think it's in the salvia family. And then here's some dogwood that I clipped off. And then we have these miniature lilacs. Oh, and that's what I wanted to say. So we took the kids to the Arboretum again, because we love the Arboretum. And they have 4 different types of lilacs there, and the hyacinth lilacs, oh, I want one so bad. The blooms are huge, and they look, I want to say juicy, but I don't know. They're really big blooms, and they smell so fragrant. They're kind of I think there might be different colors, but like a pinky purple. I will have inserted footage of those beautiful lilacs earlier on in this video in the vlog section, but we have at our house these miniature ones, which also smell amazing, but the blooms aren't like juicy, they're very delicate. And then we have an allium here, which is this purple spiky ball looking thing. They're super fun. They kind of look like fairy wands, except like a really big fairy wand. And then what else do I have in here? I think that's it. Our iris are starting to peek through. You can see, all the big green foliage, and then you can see some, I don't know what you call that shape, but I always think of buds as round. I don't think of them as long, an elongated bud. I don't know, but it's like you can see these purple sheaths coming through, and that's very exciting. Our iris have kind of spread a lot, and my husband has done a great job dividing them up to kind of create a kind of an S winding design, and they just look so cool. I saw some beautiful iris at the Arboretum that I would love to try to get my hands on. There was this like peachy colored one. I can't remember what it's called. Something Alma maybe? I can't remember, but I had the footage of it, and it is so beautiful, and I think it would look beautiful with our purple and indigo colored iris. So I don't know, we'll see. We love going to the Arboretum for, just going, but also to get ideas for what we would love to see in our own garden, and then we know what will survive and what looks good together and when things bloom and timing of different ones. We have tried really hard to plant things. We mostly do perennials, but to plant things that come up in succession so that there's always something blooming throughout the spring, summer, and into the fall. And so far, I think we've done pretty well with it. So it's definitely a work in progress and takes years to build up, but yeah, it's a work in progress. Speaking of perennials, so peonies are my absolute favorite flowers, and they usually bloom in June. Depending on the weather, sometimes early June. I think this year it's definitely more mid-June. The buds are like maybe a large marble size right now. I think maybe like an inch in diameter. I'm so excited. I really hope that they do well this year and a storm doesn't just like knock them all over. We do put plant supports around them because they can be so floppy. We have the ones that are more like a fuchsia magenta color, as well as the very soft pink. And I don't know what type they are, because some of them were here when we moved into the house, so the previous owners had planted them, and then we had planted some more as well. But they're the kind that you just want to shove your face into and just breathe it in. It's so soft and fluffy and beautiful, and hopefully I get a chance to share them with you here throughout the summer. Well, not throughout the summer, when they bloom. So we shall see. In my mug today, I have Zhenmai Cha, which is a green tea with, is it puffed rice or barley? Like puffed rice kernels? Oh, I love it so much. Yes, green tea has some caffeine in it, but I stayed up past my bedtime reading. We'll talk about that in the Eats and Reads section. So grab your beverage of choice and maybe something that you're working on, or maybe I'm helping you out with household chores today by making it less boring. Whatever it may be, let's talk about finished projects now. The first finished project I would like to share with you is the one that I am wearing. This is the Ranunculus by Midori of Knit Cafe Midori, and it is a very, very popular pattern. Let me see here, I pulled it up. It was first published in June 2017. And at least on Ravelry, there are nearly 13, that can't be right. It says 12.8K projects. Is that almost 13,000? 12K would be 12,000, right? That can't be right, but I think it is. Yeah, almost 13,000 projects. Well, I did not purchase this pattern until this, well, not this month, until May, because it didn't have a big range in sizing, and it seemed like a lot of people made modifications to make it work for them, which is totally fine. I'm always making modifications. However, I feel like it's not great if you're having to make modifications because your size isn't available. Whereas if you want to make modifications to make the fit better based on, a range of sizes, that's different. But since the update, there are now 11 sizes included, and there are different, I think, sleeve options, bodies options, and just a lot more variety. And I don't know how it compares to the previous version since I didn't purchase the previous pattern. So I can't really say to that. I can just say that this current one I am really liking. So 11 sizes, and the gauge that is recommended is 14 stitches for 4 inches of stockinette. So that's pretty loose gauge or pretty big, depending on what size of yarn, not size, what yarn weight, that's the word I'm looking for, which yarn weight you are knitting it in. And it is also available in 4 languages, English, French, Japanese, and Spanish currently. She has a lot of video tutorials linked. I will say I didn't use any of them because I didn't need it, but there are lots of them. And it is a top-down round yoke pullover, and there is some additional, what do you call it, underarm shaping involved as well. And this yoke is very textured and so beautiful. You can do different necklines, and I actually didn't follow either of the pattern neckline options. Well, I kind of did. I'll talk about it in a minute. Let me just finish giving you like the specs of the pattern, and then we'll go into what I did. The pattern does say go ahead and try using lace weight yarn, fingering weight yarn, worsted weight yarn, just whatever you want, because whatever yarn you use will just affect the density of the fabric, right? So as long as you know your gauge, you can kind of figure out what your final circumference is going to be like. So, and the recommended needles are a 6mm or US 10 and a 5mm or US 8 for the hem ribbing and sleeve finishings. And then she does say go ahead and adjust needle size as needed to get gauge, or maybe you decide you want a different gauge. So let me tell you what I did now. So I knit size 1, which is supposed to give you a finished circumference of, I think, 46 inches, which on me is way too much positive ease for what I like to wear. And I ended up, so I looked at the number of body stitches first so that I would know how many stitches I'm going to have, because I don't like to mess with the stitch count as much, although I guess I did in this one. Anyway, I'll get to that. But so first, I look at the body stitch count, which basically you look down the pattern to where the sleeve and the body separation are for like a top-down pattern, and then based on my swatch, I know how many stitches I have per inch, and then I can do some math with that body stitch count and figure out what my final circumference is going to be, and if that's something that I'm happy with, if I need to change sizes or whatever the case is. So I decided size 1 was still going to be great for me, and with my new gauge I would end up with, I think, 9 inches of positive ease at the widest part of the chest. And I stuck with the US 10 6mm needles for the neckline ribbing and the body, and then I switched to US 8 for my sleeve ribbing and for my body hem ribbing. My new gauge was at 16 stitches and 24 rounds for 4 inches. So I ended up with a slightly denser gauge than the pattern. My yarns are a very special yarn that I bought on my birthday, I think a couple of years ago. One of our local yarn shops does like a birthday coupon or birthday discount for the month of your birthday, and I decided to purchase this La Bien-Aimée yarn, and it's a single ply superwash merino, super soft, and I had bought 2 skeins. I think I'd planned on buying 3 and doing a fade for like a shawl or something, but then the third one that I wanted, I think, actually ended up being out of stock. And so the shop owner had called me and said, excuse me one second. So the shop owner had called me and said, hey, we don't actually have that third color. Do you still want the other 2? And at the time I was thinking, okay, sure, I'll take them. I'll do something with them. And then they sat for a couple years and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with them because they were mostly, they were different, but kind of still kind of the same feel. If I remember, I'll pop a picture of them here on the screen, or maybe the video that I included in the previous episode's vlog at the very end as like a sneak peek. Maybe I'll put that up here. So hopefully that'll be playing up here while I'm talking about the yarn. But so it was the Water Lilies and the Andromeda colorway, and I decided that this would be perfect for this ranunculus because it's soft and drapey, and I wanted something that just felt easy to put on, and because it's a single ply superwash merino, it'll pill really easily. If there's a lot of friction. So I thought, okay, if I make it into this and it's a short sleeve tee, there isn't going to be a lot of underarm friction because there's no like big long sleeve that's going to be rubbing on stuff or, you know, my arms on tables or things like that. So it should be a low friction garment. And yeah, so I thought it would be perfect and drapey and comfy. So I held it double, which means that the beautiful speckling is all interspersed throughout. Hopefully it is showing up. It is a nice sunny day today. There's some like pink and purple and even some like little bits of almost rusty color, minty greens, a little bit of blue. But overall, they just blended really beautifully together. And the base is kind of a light gray. So it's a light gray, soft lavender color. I feel like everything I'm into right now is whatever's in bloom, and there's a lot of lavender blooming. A lot of lavender colors blooming, I should say. I don't think our lavender bush survived the winter. It was probably not hardy enough. Oops. So, I held it together for more of a DK weight yarn, I guess you could say. And I had to unravel my swatch as well to completely finish. And the change I made, so for the collar, the neckline, there were two different options for like a wider one and a less wide one, and I just cast it on with an old Norwegian cast on with the larger needles and just went ahead and did the number of rounds stated in the pattern. And then for the body part, I did a little bit of waist shaping so that it doesn't flare out. So most cropped sweaters, if they're really boxy with a lot of positive ease, it ends up on me flaring out a little, or not necessarily flaring, but just there's just like excess fabric around the natural waist area. And today here, I'm wearing them with my Tyler trousers that I sewed. I talked about these in a previous episode, but I think I had a different pair on. I've made 3 of them. But yeah, so they're high-waisted, elastic high-waisted, there you go. My belly button is right about here, right under the elastic, so the elastic sits right on my natural waist, and then this sweater tee hits right, kind of right at that, covering up the elastic. So it's a good amount of overlap there. I do have a tank top underneath because I think the lace, the eyelets are a little too big for me to feel comfortable wearing the tee without something underneath. It also works well over a dress, like a sleeveless dress. And then the sleeves, there's a lot of options for those. You can do a short sleeve, but I don't think there's ribbing. There's like a long sleeve, 3/4 length sleeve, and I decided to, after I picked up my sleeve stitches, I think I knit a couple rounds and then went ahead and did ribbing on it because it was at a good length, I think, for a tee. And what else? I don't think there's much else to say. I used up every single inch of the yarn. Oh, the cloud is passing by. Yeah, so I unraveled my swatch and used that as well, and it's really satisfying to use up the entire 2 skeins. I started out with, I think, 107 grams of one and 105 grams of the other, and yeah, used up every last inch of it. I think, let's see, I don't have a total yardage written down in my notebook there. Let me see if I have it written down here, my total yardage. 852 yards total. And again, that was what the yarns held together. So it worked out really well for me. I loved it. I think I knit it maybe in less than a week. Being on such big needles and a fun yoke to keep trying different things, I learned some new stitch techniques, and yeah, it was just really fun. And it's so wearable and comfortable, and yeah, I love it. Second finished project, a pair of socks. I haven't knit socks in a while. Usually I always have socks on the go. I mean, I will still have them on the go, but I feel like I haven't had a finished pair of socks in a while. And by a while, maybe a couple weeks or a month, I don't know. Anyway, I love these. So I knit these as part of Amy Scher's Knit Diverse knit along, and that ended May 31st. And these socks are knit out of, well, the main color is knit from Kim Dyes yarn, and she is a Korean American dyer, and I don't know if she still sells yarn in 50 gram skeins, but she did when I purchased this yarn maybe a year or two ago, which is perfect for me because most of my socks are like 60 to 70 grams unless I make them super long. And so by purchasing a 50 gram, I can use up all of it or most of it and not have a lot left over. So I did do a little peekaboo contrast cuff here, and I do have a tutorial for that, so I'll link to it below or here on the screen. And that yarn is Reef, dyed by Kara of the Kinetic Knitter. And so it's a fold over cuff, so it's like double thick there, which is nice, which gives it more structure. And I feel like if I'm going to knit shorter socks, I don't have any issues with them sliding down, or and they just kind of hug my ankle right where I want them to. And then I did a Knit 3 Purl One ribbing. So I did it all the way around on the short leg part and then only on the instep for the foot. And then I knit a shadow wrap heel, continuing in the main color, and I follow the tutorial by my friend Denise of Earth Tones Girl, and I'll also link to that. And it's fun because the for variegated yarns or self-striping, there ends up being kind of like a little bullseye effect. I don't know if it'll show here. It's kind of hard to hold up, and my sun disappeared. Maybe it's better on the other one. Let's see. It's more visible here. It's just basically how the color pools into a circle, because when you work a short row heel, you work one half of it and then you work the second half of it. So the color ends up sometimes pooling into like a cool bullseye. That's the best I can do. So I have an 8-inch foot circumference, 9¼ inch foot length, and I wear a US 7 women's shoe. And I share that information so that maybe my yarn estimates or what I do can help you figure out what might work for you as well. And of course your gauge might differ. This yarn is a 400 yard for 100 grams, and with that weight of yarn, I usually end up with an 8 stitches per inch. Now, if I am using like a light fingering weight yarn, which is usually 463 yards for 100 grams, I usually end up closer to 9 stitches per inch, and that's using a US 1 or 2.25 millimeter needle. So I knit mine on 9-inch needles. They're ChiaoGoo needles that I prefer. I cast on with that, and I do the heel with it as well and go all the way through until I get to the toes. And once I get to the toes, I switch to 32-inch and do it magic loop, and I'll just divide my stitches half on top, half on bottom. That way it's easier to do the decreases, and then I graft the toe. And I ended up using about 53 grams of the main color. They came, here, tickling me. The yarn came, I think, at 50, it was over, a little bit over 50 grams. So I ended up using 53. And then for the pop of color here, that's a light fingering weight yarn. I ended up using about 6 grams of that, so about 3 grams per sock. The leg, I did 25 rounds after I did the fold over cuff. Then I did the shadow wrap heel. And for the foot, I ended up doing 75 rounds before starting the toe decreases, which is about 8 inches from the back of the heel. So I gave myself a little more than an inch for the I guess 1.25 inches for the toe. And I probably could have, so for the toe, I ended up knitting 3 rounds even before starting the decreases. And the reason I do that is if I was to use a different color for the toe, that's how I kind of start it. But I probably didn't need to do that since I was using a main color. In any case, they fit just fine. I don't know why I'm trying them on for you, because I don't know if you can see it. This is always a bad idea. I do this every once in a while, and I think that it'll show you something better, but I'm not sure if it does. Hopefully you can see that it is a great fit. So anyway, I love these socks. They're very comfortable. I like the length of them. I think they're perfect to go with sneakers, or I wear them with my Keens, and yeah. On to works in progress. I have 3, I think 3 to share with you. Maybe 2, maybe 3, we'll see. So continuing with the socks, we are going to look at a pair of socks that I'm knitting for my daughter. She is a 3rd grader, I guess soon to be a 4th grader, and she loves wearing the socks that I knit her. If you've been around for a while, I started knitting socks August of 2019, and I have knit her many pairs of socks, and I've passed on some of the socks that I knit for myself, maybe that were a little bit smaller than they should have been, and so they fit her. I mean, they're a little long for her, but she likes them like slightly big, because then she says she doesn't outgrow them as fast, and kids grow fast, and she gets sad when her socks don't fit her for more than a few months. But I do have a younger daughter as well who is a kindergartner, soon to be 1st grader, and she loves wearing the socks as well, so she gets the socks passed down to her. But I decided to knit her a summery pair of socks, and the yarn I'm using is this beautiful bright neon rainbowy yarn, where I would say like maybe the main like underlying color is this really bright yellow, and then there's like just splashes of neon throughout. The color is dyed by Teal Torch Knits, and Christina is a genius with like neons and brights. So if you like neons and brights, check her out. I think the color is so cheerful and happy, and I feel like if you're not somebody who likes to wear bright colors, socks can be kind of a fun way to get that in there if you are interested in wearing bright colors but don't really want to be like, look at me, I'm wearing bright colors. So socks can kind of be a fun way to do that. But my kids, they love bright colors and they will wear it head to toe, and so it is fun to knit bright socks for them. This yarn is highly variegated. There's just color everywhere, which makes it really fun to knit socks with. So let me tell you what I'm doing. Let's see. Let's see if I can find my notes here. I'm using, once again, the US 1 2.25 ChiaoGoo 9-inch circulars, and I think I had made something else with this before, so I didn't start with a full skein, but it is a light fingering weight, 463 yards for 100 grams, and I did cast on 56 stitches. I used to cast on 48 for her, and then 52, and now we're up to 56 stitches, but also since it's a lighter fingering weight, I needed to go up some more stitches. But I do an Old Norwegian cast on, which is very stretchy on top. I did a Knit One Purl One ribbing for 30 rounds, and I did it longer because she likes to fold down her socks. She likes having it more snug around, and I don't plan on making these super long so that having that fold over part, she can wear them shorter, or it can just be right around her ankles. And then I've started a leg on both of them, and I am doing a knit 3 purl 1 alternating with a knit round. And it's hard to see that texture, or not texture, but the patterning, because the yarn is so loud in a great way. But I thought that would be comfortable on her and it would be stretchy. So then if I knit it slightly longer than her foot length, it can still fit okay because it will come back together due to the elasticity, but also not be like loose, if that makes sense. So I feel like, especially with either growing feet, or even if you're gift knitting for someone you're not entirely sure their exact foot circumference or foot length or whatever, ribbing I feel like is more forgiving than just stockinette because, well, it can stretch, right? So I knit my socks 2 at a time on their own needles. That way I don't get second sock syndrome, and then I can just play catch up. So if I do like 10 rounds of leg on this one, then I can stop and then do 10 rounds of leg on this one the next day. So they are knitting up really fun in super summery colors, and she loves them. She says they look like I am knitting magic, and you know, knitting is like magic, isn't it? I think so. You have basically like a string that you can make into pretty much anything. Okay, let's go on to my next 2 works in progress. They are both knit out of Purl Soho's Linen Quill, which is, I want to say it's like my favorite fingering weight yarn right now, but I feel like each yarn has its purpose, or different fiber contents have their purpose, right? So like I love a superwash merino for certain things, and I love a merino nylon base for socks, but this special blend that is Linen Quill is so beautiful for like shawls and garments. So here's the tag. 50% fine Highland wool, 35% alpaca, 15% linen at 439 yards for 100 grams. It is not superwash. It is made in Peru, and let's see, we'll show you this one first. This is my half and half triangles wrap by Purl Soho. You've seen it before. I started this one end of April or first day of May, something like that, shortly after I finished my previous one. And this one I've named Garden Bouquet. This is my fourth one, and I've named each one based on my mood and the colors that I chose. And this one is the first color. I'm using this peachy pink, which I think reads much more orange or peach than pink. I feel like some of them kind of change depending on the lighting, but this one definitely leans more orange than pink. I feel like some peachy pinks are more pink, but this is more orange. It's kind of like a, how did I describe it last time? Like a fluorescent melon. Anyway. Needles I am using are Addie's. Here's the packaging. I was using ChiaoGoo's for my first half and half triangles wrap, but the repetitive motion hurt my fingers. I don't always push the stitch off with my fingers, but I do sometimes, and I just feel like with the, I mean, it's knit stitches the entire way, and just with all of the thousands of stitches, it just didn't feel good. So I bought these for the first time. I had used it on my second one. I'd never used Addie's before, and I really like it. I think the tip is definitely more blunt, which for something like this where I'm not doing lace work or any increases, like make ones where I have to knit through the back loop or anything like that, I feel like they work really well. So I've been really enjoying this. I finished my first skein, which was not a full skein because I had used it in the color work of my Sonder pullover. So I finished that, and I joined my second one, which is a full skein, and I'm pretty sure I will use every last inch of it. Yeah, we'll see how it goes till the end, but this is where I'm at. I'm gonna back up a little. Hopefully you can see it okay. If you're not super familiar with the pattern, I've talked about it a ton in previous episodes. I started my first one, I think, July of last year, so there's a lot of episodes since then, but I am casting on a different size than I did previously. So the free pattern comes with two sizes. Largest size is 260 stitches, smaller size is 190 stitches, and you cast on with that full number from the beginning. So you are committed when you start. And my first one I did 260, my second and third one I did 230, and this one I think I'm doing 220 only because I have slightly less yarn to start with this color, and yeah, we'll see how far it goes. But the only other things I'm changing are I slip one stitch on the edge. So instead of knitting all the way to the edge for a garter edge, I have one slip stitch on the edging. And then the other thing I'm changing, or have changed, is instead of doing wrap and turns for all the short rows, I do German short rows. And I do have a tutorial on the modifications that I have made, and I can also link to that in the description box below this video. So this is a project that I just have ongoing throughout the summer, and I'll share the progress with you here and there. It's basically will look like the same thing for a long time. And then my second color, I don't have it with me here, but it's a neon pink, and I think that'll be really fun. So yeah, we'll see when I share this next. I feel like otherwise you're just seeing like this triangle blob all the time, but I do love it and I enjoy working on it, so I like talking about it. Next work in progress is a test knit that I am doing for Amy Scher, and it is her coloring book tee. Several months ago I test her coloring book Raglan, and I knit 2 of those. And it's just such a great staple piece to throw on over anything. And she had mentioned that she was going to design a lighter weight one because the coloring book Raglan is knit using worsted weight yarn. And then my second one, I modified it to be DK weight. And so this one is fingering weight. And her sample is knit using Purl Soho's linen quill. And of course, I'm a fan of this yarn. I'm a fan of Amy. So it kind of just had to be, right? So I'll show you where I'm at. I am using the colorway, I think it's called Purple Smoke. It's this like bluey lavender gray color, which I think is such a good neutral. I guess I am someone who finds a lot of colors that can be in that neutral area. Like, I don't think neutral has to be only beige, gray, what other colors people consider neutral? Browns, or I don't know. I feel like a neutral is something that can just go with anything, maybe, oh, maybe not, I don't know. I mean, some people think hot pink goes with everything, but I wouldn't necessarily call hot pink a neutral. But yes, I think this color is kind of is a neutral. Maybe muted colors, people consider muted colors neutral. Anyway, I don't know. So, I will show you where I'm at. Oh, and I have it in a project bag I sewed. I don't know if I sewed this last year or 2 years ago. The designer of this fabric is Asian Australian. And I really love her designs. I think they're so fun, and some of them are very whimsical. This one has a lot of different characters on it with different interests. So somebody's scuba diving, someone's building a robot, someone looks like they're doing chemistry, someone's an adventurer, somebody is in maybe healthcare or the medical field, someone might be a vet. I love it. And of course, since it has this like dusty lavender on it, I had to match my project in it. Until it outgrows it, then I'll put it in something else. But I'll show you where I'm at. It's top down, Raglan. I won't say too much about it since it is a test, but here we are. So the neckline looks super wide right now because I'll go back later to pick it up to do the ribbing. But yeah, I'm just on the Raglan sections. I have a stitch marker here by Reshma of Hello Lavender. She does a lot of polymer clay. This one has flowers on it and it says I Matter. It was part of her affirmations collection. And on the front I have a progress keeper by Maria of Woolen Forest. Her Etsy shop is Forest Charm, and she does a lot of gemstone progress keepers, stitch markers, and some earrings as well. So I like to mark the front of my work, and I use that to kind of, well, keep me oriented, but also to show my progress when I'm working on it for myself, not for on here. I know some people on YouTube will mark where they were last time, and then you can see where they are the next time, but I move it when I work on it. So you may or may not see like the progress as tangibly, but yeah, so this is one that I am working on, and there will be stripes in the body and the sleeve, and that color, I don't know if I have it here. Oh, I have the leftover of one of them here. Will be Honey Pink, and that is that kind of like warm beigey yellow with very subtle washes of pink on it. I used it in my Golden Hour half and half triangles wrap, and this is what I have remaining. So I did have to get another skein, which I don't mind. Let me see, maybe I do have it here. Which I don't mind at all because I really like this color, and I feel like it's, I was gonna say a neutral. Oh, here's my other full skein. This'll be easier to imagine them together. So these are my two colors, Purple Smoke and Honey Pink, and I love it. I think they go really nicely together. They're not necessarily like a super expected combination, but it's kind of what I like, right? Unexpected combinations that go really well together. I think that is it for the knitting, and now we will be talking about books. And eats and reads. So at the beginning of this vlog, you'll have seen that I did make a rhubarb crisp. I was talking about rhubarb in the last episode, and it was really good, especially with vanilla ice cream. And then, so my husband did end up finding a rhubarb plant to purchase from our local nursery. And anytime we went on walks and we saw people with rhubarb, we're like, we should ask them if we can, buy some from them. But yeah, he ended up finding it at a local nursery, and so we now have rhubarb planted, and I hope it keeps. I hope it'll do okay. We will see, but that's exciting. But yeah, I have been reading a lot, and a new to me author, Elizabeth Lim, Asian American author who, let me just look up here. She says she grew up in San Francisco Bay Area, and before becoming an author, she was a professional film and video game composer, and she's an alumna of Harvard College and the Juilliard School, and now she lives in New York City with her husband and her 2 daughters. And I am in love with her writing style. I love how she describes things, and I like her character development and her world building and the way she just sweeps me off my feet, and I just fall in love with the characters. It's everything I love in reading, and I have been just so enchanted with her books. And I've been reading the YA fiction. It's like sci-fi fantasy. And I think I'll just flash the pictures on the screen because the books from the library all have like a shiny covering on them, so it's really hard to see. And the covers are just beautiful. The barcode on them also covers up some of the beautiful covers. So yeah, I will flash images of the covers here on the screen as I talk about the books. That way you can see what it looks like, and they're so beautiful. So I have been reading, the first one I read was Spin the Dawn. So there's a duology called The Blood of Stars, and the first book is Spin the Dawn, and the second book is Unravel the Dusk. And I'm assuming, that if you're here, you are into knitting and crafting or something like that, or you just like hearing people talk about it, which is also fine. But the book includes like knitting, dyeing, spinning, sewing, weaving, and magic, and love, and family, and it's so good. I am not someone who does book reviews, so I couldn't go into like detail about stuff like that, but I really enjoyed it. So if you like YA fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, magic, all the things that I just mentioned, I would recommend you giving this a try. She also talks about different foods, and they're foods that I'm familiar with. Something else that was really neat. So I read these 2. So let's see, Spin the Dawn, just to give you an idea, I think it's like almost 400 pages. And then the second one, I think it's about the same, like 350, yeah, 350 pages. And once I finished them, I was going back and rereading it. Some of it I was reading from the front, and some of it I was just reading like certain sections that I wanted to read again, and still so good. I think I'm just gonna have to buy these books when I have to return them to the library. Like, not buy the library ones, but buy the duology. And then I just started another one, also by Elizabeth Lim, called 6 Crimson Cranes. And it is based on the, what is it called? Swans? Well, I think it's a Grimm Brothers fairy tale that it's in a different setting and with cranes instead of swans. And it is so magical and enchanting, and I'm about, let's see, maybe 2/3 of the way through, and I can already see myself rereading it again. I'm just, I love it. Okay, so that's not very helpful. So something really neat about 6 Crimson Cranes is that it includes references to people and places in the previous books. And when I was starting to reread the ones from the duology, there was some mention of things that are actually in this book. And I think this book was written later. Yeah, this one was published after the other 2. But it's just so fun when things kind of go in and out of different books. And there's a map in the front of this world that she has built up in these stories. And the map is also in the duology. but a different part of this world that has been built up. And so, like, this map of this land area is for this story, but over here, the kingdom of Kayata. Anyway, this part is in the Six Crimson Cranes book. Now, they're not like related in the sense that you have to read, you know, the duology before you read the other one or anything like that. It's more so that it was just a really neat connection that as I was reading this one, I was like, wait, that's the same thing as the other one. Or looking at the map, I was like, oh, I recognize that from the previous book. But anyway, if you like stories like that, I highly recommend these books by Elizabeth Lim. I am just enchanted by them. All right, I think that is everything that I wanted to share with you today. The kids are slowly wrapping up school, or I shouldn't say slowly, quickly it seems. Very quickly, and the end of the school year always has a lot of things going on. So one of the kids at their school has a fun run, so we're all going to go do the fun run. I think it's a 2-mile run. You can run or walk, but they have it all mapped out. They just sent out the map for that. The kindergartner, they've been doing an ABC countdown, so counting down the days until the last day of school, which will be Z, and then each day, if they want to, they can bring something small that starts with that letter. And she's brought all sorts of different stuffed animals and characters to school, and I was trying to think what else she has brought. There were some things I think she did, some days where she didn't end up bringing something, but today she brought, what did she bring today? Well, anyway, now I can't remember. In the rush of the morning, sometimes something just gets thrown in, or we try to do it the night before, but as you know, things don't always go as planned. But yeah, I hope you are doing well yourself and that maybe you have some exciting plans for this summer or winter if you are in the southern hemisphere. But as always, take good care of yourself, your loved ones, your neighbors, and cheers. Cheers to being creative, and I will talk to you next time.